What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our Week 13 college football predictions. As always, I got Ty here to break down this week's unfortunate slate of games. Thank you, SEC, for that one. We're going to jump to Week 12, go back to last week, and Ty, I mean, look at you breaking 500 for it feels like, I think, the first time this year.
Oh yeah.
A long
Yeah.
time coming.
Started out horrible this year. It was I think I was 2-10 through 2 weeks. So it's been a uphill battle the whole way. Thank you to UMass. Unfortunately, they covered this week, but in week 12, I kept riding the streak, and it just keeps happening for them. So easy money on UMass. And then you get Clemson and Arizona winning outright, so that was big. And Missouri blowing out Mississippi State, Florida State taking care of business. So if you were riding these picks, didn't even really have to sweat out any of those 5 wins. And you didn't have to sweat out the loss because Texas absolutely got their doors blown off by Georgia. So no close calls at all.
Yeah, and here we go to week 13. Got a lot of teams, all spreads here. I'm going OU covering versus Mizzou, James Madison covering versus Wazoo, and then I have Houston covering versus TCU. And then I got three road warriors for me this week. I got Kentucky going on the road at Vandy, getting the 9.5. I think they'll lose, if not win, and cover that one. Michigan, like I said. Maryland, they just are the worst team, I think, in college football history in the last 10 years in November. So I love Michigan covering on the road after what could have been a letdown spot last week. And then USC plus 9.5 at Oregon. I just think these offenses are going to go back and forth. I don't think it's going to get too out of hand there, so I like the 9.5.
Well, I'm starting out with a loss already this week. I had obviously my anti-UMass bet. They covered, only lost by 28 this week to fall to 0-11. So starting 0-1, but we're bouncing back with Arkansas plus 8.5. Ultimate trap game for Texas, coming off getting blown out by Georgia. Next week, Texas A&M comes to Austin. So, kind of a look ahead spot here for Texas. I think Arkansas plays them close. I got South Carolina minus 23.5. Might as well take advantage of one of these SEC cupcake games here in week 13. So there's one of them. I got Penn State minus 8.5. Feels like when teams have had similar seasons and you see a big spread like that, it usually goes in that direction. So I think Penn State, who's been playing very hard for their interim coach, I think they win by double digits against Nebraska. And same thing with Oregon. Everyone's, making this out to be a really close game, potential upset for USC. And then you see a 9.5 point spread. A lot of times that tells you something. So I'm going with Oregon there. And then Vanderbilt's been on the struggle bus lately. So I think Kentucky covers the 9.5 and plays them close.
And last week's didn't go so well. Hopefully you just missed last week's video because we were just throwing rocks around and hoping it would hit something. And unfortunately, didn't really go in our favor. I guess you're the big winner off of last week because we picked three different games and you won two of those three. But my biggest takeaway from this week is Alabama finally met their match, a good pass defense, and because this Bama run game has been awful all year. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's been pretty bad. Georgia destroyed Texas. So we really got, I think, a little more clarity in the SEC because I think it's Georgia and Texas A&M are the top two. And then after that, I think it's a scrum for who's going to be that team to possibly somehow get an SEC championship.
Yeah, and as for Duke, that's where I'm focusing my attention. At least their fans can stop pretending they ever cared about football because this team was thrown so many lifelines this year. One of, if not the most talented team in the ACC, which has been just a chaotic conference this year. And they obviously had 4 losses going into last week, still had a chance to make the college football playoff with only one conference loss. And once again, thrown a lifeline and they do nothing with it. They get blown out at home by Virginia. So really disappointing season so far for the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, and we'll jump to this week. We got Hawaii and UNLV, and that game, I don't think it's getting talked about enough. I know it's a late kick, but this game's a huge game in the Mountain West. Both these teams are still playing for a chance at the conference championship, and I think Hawaii is going to go on the road to Vegas and get that win. And I say that because Hawaii has just been the better team in these last 5 games. They've been winning more comfortably, putting up a lot of points, and not really stressing. I mean, last week or 2 weeks ago, sorry, they beat San Diego State at home by 32. And that was a team where we thought this team could possibly run the table and get into the college football playoff until Hawaii ran into them and fortunately gave them that loss. And I think that's going to be kind of the same here for the UNLV game.
This is going to be a fun game. Like if you're out with your buddies Friday night, getting home late, this will be a great game to turn on because there's going to be a lot of points, not a lot of defense being played. But I think UNLV, tough spot for Hawaii here, going on the road on a Friday night. Obviously, any road game for them is a lot of travel. So I think UNLV playing at home, still with an electrifying offense. I think Hawaii just won't be able to quite keep up with them, and UNLV wins a shootout.
And then moving to the Saturday slate, it's Louisville goes on the road to SMU, and two teams that I thought would be more in contention for a playoff because the ACC, I mean, everybody's involved at this point. I like SMU at home. They obviously come into this one 4-1 in their last five. Some big wins. Obviously, that Miami game is kind of what threw them in the right direction. But imagine if they kick one more field goal and beat Wake Forest 15-13. That SMU team would probably have a legitimate chance to get into the playoff with the big wins that they have in ACC play. And I mean, there's still an outside chance that this SMU team can get into the playoff. I mean, a lot has to happen, of course, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised if something like that were to happen because I think they can run the table here. And it starts here with just beating up, I think, a demoralized Louisville team.
Yeah, speaking of disappointing ACC teams, Louisville felt like they had the ACC in their hands 2 weeks ago, and now they just feel like a team that's in total free fall. And I think this is a tough road spot for them. Early kick. SMU still has everything to play for. Only one ACC loss for them. And like I said, I think Louisville's just really reeling right now, and I think they continue their losing skid here with a road loss.
Moving to ABC at 12, I do have these channels again. Just putting that out
Yep.
there. I do have these channels now. Um, Mizzou at Oklahoma. And I think 3 weeks ago, I'm probably taking Mizzou with a healthy Bo Prabula. But since this team has just fallen off the map, I mean, they've been competitive, but it's not the same team. And OU, obviously, coming off of a huge win last week. Defense at home. Maybe Mateer, this is the game where he gets right and really takes this Oklahoma team back to what they were before his injury. And if that's the case, then I like Oklahoma here to just blow the doors off Mizzou.
Yeah, I think Mizzou's going to play them close here for about 3 quarters. I mean, such a huge win for Oklahoma last week, going to Alabama. So I think it's a bit of a letdown spot here. And I don't know if anyone really watched the Missouri-Mississippi State game, but Ahmad Hardy absolutely went off in that game. And if this team didn't lose 3 games, I think he'd be in the Heisman conversation. So I think he keeps Missouri in it for a while. But the absence of Bo Prabula is really going to show up in the fourth quarter against that Oklahoma defense, and I think the Sooners end up pulling away late.
And then at 2 o'clock for the third week in a row, we got Kennesaw State Owls on our picks, and I'm picking them for the third week in a row. So that means they're probably losing for 3 straight weeks because I'm 0 for on them. But give credit to Missouri State, what they're doing their first year in the FBS. It's such a crime that the NCAA just says you don't get to go to a bowl game your first 2 years being in the FBS. And this team's competing for a Conference USA championship in their first year, and you can't even go to a bowl game if it doesn't even happen. So unfortunate for them, and I think unfortunately their chances of winning Conference USA go down the drain as well here as Kennesaw State fights to see another day.
Yeah, what a story it's been for Kennesaw State. I think they had what 1 win last year, maybe two. I
Mhm.
remember they started 0-7. So just a crazy turnaround for them and only their second year in FBS. So I think they keep their Conference USA championship hopes alive and they get a big home win over Missouri State.
Moving to 3:30, Arkansas, Texas, and don't overthink it. It's going to be Texas, but the way they win, I think, is going to be a questionable one because I think Taylon Green can just go in there and light up this Texas defense because it's been suspect at times. And there's going to be one SEC team that loses at home this week. It could be this one. It could be Vandy. Could be that Oklahoma game, like you said, could be a letdown game. as of now, I'm taking all the favorites to win, but I wouldn't be shocked if one were to lose.
Yeah, that whole like SEC being the deepest conference argument, Texas has been doing amazing at, making that argument look right because every bottom feeder in the SEC has been playing Texas right down to the wire. We saw it with Kentucky, Mississippi State. I think we see it again here. Like I said in the opening, I think it's a perfect letdown slash trap game spot for Texas coming off a loss to a top five team, another top five team coming into their place next week in the rivalry game. So I think Texas kind of plays with their food here like they've been doing all year, but eventually the talent kicks in, and I think Texas wins a close game, setting up a huge matchup next week with A&M.
And at 3:30 as well, like I said, another letdown look ahead game because Vandy, they win this game, they have a legitimate chance to go to the playoff if they can beat Tennessee next week. I think they're going to win this one, but like you said earlier, I do like the spread here for this road team coming in. Kentucky, people forget that they played Georgia tough at the beginning of SEC play. Ole Miss, they were leading 20-10, I think, at the beginning of the fourth, if not late third. And look at how Ole Miss turned out. So Kentucky. Definitely a tough opponent. Obviously has some great coaching staff over there, but Diego Pavia Mania is still taking over, and he gets this win with like I said, a possible tilt at going to the playoff next week. Yeah, Vandy. I don't know how they did it this year, but somehow Vandy's going to be in that conversation.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would be surprised to see that Kentucky's 5-5. I know that's nothing to write home about, but I mean, this team was to almost anyone the worst team in the 16 team SEC at one point. And like you said, played a lot of teams close, should have beat Texas on their home field. So this team's been really scrappy over the last month or so, and I think you see more of the same. It feels like Vanderbilt's just been kind of treading water ever since they lost to Alabama in October. So I think Kentucky has a chance to, play another top team close this weekend. I think they cover the 9.5, but I think it comes down to Pavia making a play late, like we've seen so many times this year. And I think Vanderbilt wins a close one. So next week, Vanderbilt, Tennessee. I mean, is it win and you're in for Vanderbilt? We'll see.
And hopefully you got the quad box about almost queued up here because it's three of your four boxes filled with this USC Oregon game. I'm going the Trojans on the road. And last week was the test for me. Awful weather, a great defense coming in, and those are things that USC just hasn't been able to do in these last few years under Lincoln Riley. But the test has been aced, and I think they can do it again. Maybe they can escape with a B in this one and still get a win. The weather's supposed to be pretty bad in this one, but USC, they got the momentum for once at this point in the season. It feels like they would be losing it at this time in the season. And Oregon obviously has been probably the most underrated team in college football this year, not getting enough love. That comes to rest here, and a lot of those people are going to be right because I think the Trojans walk away with a win and cause even more chaos for the playoff.
Yeah, I'm going the other way on this one. I think a lot of people have been a little underwhelmed with Oregon ever since September, because remember, out of the gates, they were just destroying everybody. And then, they've, like Vanderbilt, they've kind of been treading water over the last month or maybe 2 months. But I think we get back to prime Oregon here. I think we see why everyone was so high on this team early in the season. They haven't really had a chance to prove it. I mean, they went to Iowa in bad weather, got out of there with an ugly win, which is the only way they could. So
Mm.
I think this weekend will be a chance for them to really showcase the talent they have on both sides of the ball. And I think this run for USC finally comes to an end. I think it's Oregon by about 2 touchdowns here. Comfortable win, and they pretty much cement themselves into the college football playoff.
And then at four, Houston, which still has an outside chance getting into that Big 12 championship game, has to win this one. And coming off of a bye week, I think it's definitely doable that Willie Fritz and his team can get to a 10-win season. TCU is no joke, though. They've been playing a lot of teams close in the Big 12, but Houston, out of the bye week, I think is just what gets them over the edge here, gets them to that ninth win before they can possibly go for 10 next week against Baylor.
Yeah, huge game for the Cougars. I think I'm just kind of out on TCU. They feel like they have the talent. but just haven't been able to come up with that big win in the Big 12 this year. Last week felt like maybe an opportunity, and they just get run off the field by BYU. So going on the road here, very small spread, which is kind of raising some eyebrows for me. But I still think Houston, you got to give them the benefit of the doubt. They just continue to find ways to win this year, and I think they get it done again. I think Willie Fritz is a great coach, underrated coach, and I think that comes into play here.
Yeah, then starting the nightcap, we got Pittsburgh going on the road to face Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech wins this one. They officially go to the ACC championship game, obviously, because next week they play Georgia, who is not in their conference, and that would be the first time since 2014 that Georgia Tech is playing for an ACC championship, and I hope it happens just for the sake of everybody, so we at least know what team might be getting into the college football playoff. And I also am at the point where I think Pitt can just walk in here and get that upset win and create more chaos because Georgia Tech has been living dangerously on the edge of the cliff for about 8 of their 10 games this year. About 7 of those 8 have gone their way. I think it can happen again here. That's why I'm picking them, just because Haynes King, I trust him more. It's like last year with Miami. We have Cam Ward and they don't. And that's kind of the same situation here for Haynes King and Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I mean it's projected to be a close game with a 2.5 point spread. Georgia Tech knows how to win close games. They've been doing it pretty much all year. So uh, all I'll say is Pitt better have something crazy in store for this game after Pat Narduzzi's comments saying last week didn't matter, and then they came out and played like it against Notre Dame. So they better have something saved up for this game. But that being said, I know Georgia Tech has won a lot of ugly games, especially last week beating Boston College by 1. But I think they come out there and they do what they've continued to do, which is find ways to win. I think Haynes King has been one of the more underrated quarterbacks this season, and I think it comes down to him making the necessary plays in the fourth quarter to set up a big matchup with Georgia next week.
Also at 7 o'clock, you got probably one of the best games NBC's put out this year is Nebraska at Penn State with backup quarterbacks on the line. And I'm going Nebraska here on the road. I say that because Matt Rule is returning home, quote unquote home. A lot of people were linking him to this Penn State job before he signed his extension. And it means more for him than I think it does Penn State at this point in the season. Obviously Penn State's still playing to go to a bowl game, give them little incentive here for these last 2 games. But Nebraska, I mean, yeah, they lost Raiola, but this team, I don't want to say has missed a step, but they're still winning games and finding ways to do so, even under another true freshman quarterback. So I like Nebraska here to go into what used to be a very hostile environment at the beginning of the year, in which now it's kind of just another road game.
Yeah, I think last week showed a lot for Penn State. Finally getting their first win under the interim coach, and the team just absolutely going crazy for him. They know what that meant for him, and it just shows that he has not lost the locker room. This team is still playing hard. Remember the week before had Indiana beat until Mendoza took him down the field on that last drive. So this team is finally starting to play up to what their talent level should be. So I think this week is the perfect storm. You got Nebraska coming in with a backup quarterback. I think this defense is going to feast for Penn State. And Grunkemeyer is starting to look pretty good at quarterback. There were some growing pains when he took over for Drew Aller, but I think he's starting to play well. And I think Penn State puts it all together here, and I think they cover the 8.5.
Then at 7:30, I know it pains me to pick them, but Michigan fan first, obviously. But I'm going with Florida here. We were talking about it before 2022. I think it's 2022. Um, Tennessee was 1-17 against this Florida team in the 18 years. And then obviously they won the last 2 because Florida has just been awful. But this is the perfect Florida match for them where they can just go in there at home night game against a ranked team that they've dominated in the last 25 years. They're going to somehow find a way. I think this is going to be the game where Florida puts it all together. Tennessee, living on the edge of hoping everyone else can lose so they can somehow get into the playoff conversation. But they're going to take themselves out tonight with a loss to Florida and, give Florida their credit here. I mean, they got to get one big win. besides the Texas game? Because, obviously Texas has kind of fallen off as well.
Yeah, I think all the pressure here is on Tennessee, and I think that's why the line is so low for this game. Florida, nothing to play for, no head coach, bowl game is out of the question. But like you said, Tennessee has been absolutely owned by Florida over the last 2 decades. And a team with nothing to lose, playing at home at night is always very dangerous. That being said, though, I think Joey Aguilar is just gonna keep the ball out of harm's way just a little bit more than DJ Lagway. And I think Tennessee playoff hope's probably gone, but I think they still have a lot to play for this year. A chance to get to 10 wins, a chance at Vanderbilt next week to really salvage their season. So I think there's still a lot on the line for them. And I think they go on the road here and win a close game against Florida.
Yeah, and then the last game we got for you is probably one of the bigger ones of the week. It's going to be BYU at Cincinnati, and Cincinnati could have came into this game a 9-1 record as well, but unfortunately they got blown out to Utah and lost the tough one at home to Arizona. And now they're sitting here at 7-3 with almost no chance to get into the conference championship unless they win this game. They got to do it, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Kalani Sitake and this BYU team has it all figured out at this point in the season. We saw it last year though, the collapse did happen. So I can understand the worry there if you are leaning towards BYU. I don't know. It just seems like this, if there's going to be a year for BYU to at least get to the Big 12 championship game, it has to be this year with what they've came through, their whole quarterback situation and what it's turned into this year. I don't know. Give me the Cougars on the road to get to 10-1.
Yeah, I think last week was one where a lot of people thought BYU would finally get tripped up by a lesser team, kind of take themselves out of the playoff race, but they just, like I said earlier, absolutely blew out TCU. And now this week, same exact point spread. This time it's on the road, but I think Cincinnati, similar to Louisville, is a team that's kind of reeling right now. Like you said, tough home loss last week. Now another chance for a home win, but I think BYU has just shown, similar to Georgia Tech, that they can continue to find ways to win. Whether it's pretty or not, this team knows how to win close games. So I think when it comes down to it this week, BYU will be the team that makes the plays late in the game. And I think they win another close one. It just feels like a rematch is on the horizon between them and Tech. And the question will be in that, are we going to penalize BYU if they lose that game? Or will
No,
it be like an SMU last year? So that'll be
no.
interesting.
They better not.
No, they shouldn't.
They shouldn't. But that's all we got for you this week on week 13. Check back next week because we'll probably have an earlier video. We'll probably try to get that out to you guys Wednesday night, Thursday morning on Thanksgiving because obviously there is a game on Thanksgiving and there's obviously a lot of games out on Friday as well. So make sure you guys are up to date with that. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.